Welcome back to another episode of the Dynasty Pros Devy Show. I am Tommy Harvey, along with Justin Taylor, SC Romero, and Andy Pham. Tonight we will go over the Week 10 weekend in review, talking about Colorado, USC, and Washington, the Georgia game. All that will be coming up next. Dive head first into this thing, shall we? First thing we got up on the docket is the Georgia offense. Ever since Brock Bowers went down, Carson Beck has really leaned on Dominic Lovett, Oscar Delp, and Lad McConkey. Those three guys have really stepped up big for this Georgia team, this Georgia offense. They put Missouri away kind of late. And they got a big time matchup this weekend against Ole Miss. What are you guys seeing out of Georgia? Are they still a national championship front runner in your opinion, or are they kind of falling behind anybody, or what all do you guys think?
I still like Georgia. Missouri really put up a battle. I thought they played pretty well. Obviously, cooked the picks in the fourth quarter, kind of put that game away. But I thought Missouri fought hard. But I think Georgia, they were going to eventually get a game at home. Someone was going to play them a little bit tough, and they stepped up. They did the plays they needed. Delpit, I thought, was big for them in a couple of big situations without Bowers. Beck looks solid. This team is not the team it was last year. I just think that we just got to realize that's not the case. But that doesn't mean that this team isn't good. It's just not as dominant as the team that was last year. I still think they're one of the teams to beat. To me, in my mind, looking at them, Michigan's past them in my mind. I just think Michigan looks like they got a better defense, and I just think they're a better overall team. But I think they're right there. I definitely think they're 1, 2, 3, right in that top four. When you're talking about playoff mix, obviously big game with Ole Miss coming up. It ought to be interesting to see if Ole Miss. This is the games that we've been waiting for Ole Miss to actually show up, and they just haven't in any of these big games the last couple of years. But Dominic Lovett had one of his better games. The ex-Missouri Tiger had one of his better games for Georgia, and they did what they had to and did just enough to get it done.
I think if anything, it just shows that I don't think Georgia is a team that you can say can't get beaten. I think this year is just something that they can. And these teams that are potentially in the playoffs, with it being a 14 playoff, Florida State, Michigan, Ohio State, Washington. Those are the top five right now. All of them have some pretty good offenses, some offenses that know how to move the field. They have some good wide receivers on there. So I think Georgia can still have the better defense, but I also think that defense is vulnerable. And these are guys that if they take, seize the opportunity, seize the moment, they can definitely come out with that victory. Georgia, probably still the favorite. I think just slightly, again, just having that SAC lenience. But I love Carson Beck. I think he's doing really great. And with the 2025 class all around, just kind of looking questionable. There's a lot of question marks. I think that weren't necessarily answered that we saw the freshman year. We're like, this is exciting, this looks good. And now I think it's up for grabs. So, I mean, if he goes out there and wins, or at least comes back and, improves even next year, we're going to be talking about him a lot more. I think he's doing great. He's not making some silly mistakes or anything. This last week was his worst game as far as completion percentage, just over 65%. But, I mean, he really doesn't have the same weapons as you saw Bennett had last year, so especially with Bowers down, that's a big hit. So these guys are having to step up, not just him or his receivers, but as a full offensive team. I think, again, that's where you see the vulnerability. They're all trying to get in the mix and trying to figure out who they are as an athlete in Georgia, because they were leaning on Bowers heavily before.
Yeah, I think Georgia's a top 4 team. I think Carson Beck looks more and more comfortable with every passing week, and he's going to make that argument for a top 3 for next year's draft class.
Yeah, I actually really like Carson Beck as an NFL prospect. Yeah, he's able to make all the throws. He's smart. He's accurate. Um, he just looks like an NFL quarterback to me. And I I think he really could push for that QB1, QB2 spot in the 2025 draft. Um, but I've actually really grown to appreciate Lad McConkey's game too. He reminds me, just kind of like that Julian Edelman, Wes Welker type of guy, who's going to be, who doesn't mind kind of mixing it up in the middle of the field, kind of getting into those dirty type of situations.
Yeah, I think with him, I think he's that missing piece of that offense because at the beginning of the year when he was hurt, he missed I believe like the first 3 or 4 games, and Georgia on offense was really they were they looked lost, and then once he came back, everything clicked. It was as if he was that missing piece. They put it together, and then everything was right again.
Yeah. All right, let's go and jump into into the Pac-12 portion of the show. I know JT was kind of wanting to talk about the Pac-12 quarterbacks and how we would rank them as far as being Devy assets, and where we feel as if they could potentially be drafted. Um, JT, go and get us started here.
Yeah, I was just now that we've kind of hit the meat of this Pac-12 season, and we got to see a lot of these guys go to head, seeing a lot of the big games. I just kind of, we've talked a lot about these Pac-12 quarterbacks throughout the year. I just kind of wanted to get a feel for where everybody's at right now as they're thinking these guys, either overall Devy rankings or where you kind of think these guys are falling as far as Pac-12 for Devy. Because we've seen a lot of great games from some of these guys. We've seen some really bad games. People love Caleb Williams, and all of a sudden everybody hates him. Sanders got the great start. They played some really tough teams, and he has not looked as good. And then, for all the guys that, you've got Bo Nix, who's looked pretty good pretty much the entire season, and Michael Penix Jr. has put up unbelievable stats, but he's actually had a couple, down games as far as he's concerned the last few weeks. So I just kind of wanted to get a temperature check from everybody, kind of where they're feeling Devy-wise on these guys. Obviously, we'll know more once we get into the draft combine and all that. But I just kind of want to see what everybody's feeling on these 4 or 5 or 6 QBs, kind of at the top of the Pac-12.
Yeah, obviously you have to start Caleb Williams at number one. He's still the number one overall quarterback to me. I know some people have kind of developed questions about him, whether they've kind of made those up in their mind or if those are real legit questions. I don't have any major concerns about him. He seems like a competitor to me. He's got all the tools. Can make basically all the plays. Places the ball wherever he wants to a lot of the times. So he would be my one. My number two would be Penix Jr. I think he's potentially a middle to late first round type of quarterback in this coming draft. Then I'll probably go Shador third. I think he's going to get the benefit of being Deion Sanders' kid. Whether or not he has the same type of potential as other players do. So he's going to get the opportunity partially because of his name. And I would throw Cam Ward in there probably as the number 4. I like his game a lot. I think he's a better. I think he's a better NFL prospect than what Bo Nix is. You guys know how I feel about Bo Nix. I've seen it far too often from him before. When he played in the SEC, that just him playing against SEC defenses for so long, he just didn't look like an NFL quarterback. And now that he's kind of escaped out west, I still have those questions about him. Has he gotten substantially better, or is he taking advantage of playing against weaker defenses?
That's fair. Have me questioning Bo Nix here. I mean, but that's okay. We love Oregon and all that. I mean, I think he could start over some of the quarterbacks right now that are getting the starting job in the NFL. But I mean, my rankings, I would definitely have Caleb number one. You hit everything you need to talk about with him as far as the tangibles, making able to hit the throws right on the money. The question for me just comes with the off-field things that are going on, just things he's saying. And, when you get to NFL, media is going to be all over you. It's a different atmosphere, different energy. So you need to be able to address it properly. And I just don't think he has right now. So does it affect his draft stock? No, probably not. But, I'm concerned if that ego, if you will, gets in the way of him, and because of that, you don't have that same team or that same leadership. The people don't follow you as much because you're not really backing it up. Phoenix Jr. definitely number two. Just Washington's look great. He's looking like he can make the throws. He has a great IQ for the game. And I agree. I think a late first or something like that for him. Shedeur, also my three. I've been high on him all year. He's been my QE3 for a majority of it. Just a guy that has everything right. Just like Caleb in the games they're losing, it's definitely on that defense. He's not necessarily making the simple mistakes. He's leading the team doing what he can, but the defenses are losing these games, and it's unfortunate. I think he comes back. I just don't think it's worth it for him to try to go out. Last mock I saw on Take-A-Thon had him going in the second round, and he's been first for the past, 8 weeks or so. First round, now he's going to the second. So I think he comes back for the possibility of moving up. Bo Nix at 4. I just think Bo Nix he's a startable quarterback. Is he necessarily a franchise quarterback? No, not necessarily, but I think he could definitely start in the NFL on some of these teams. We're seeing a lot of these quarterbacks come in, and I would start him over Clayton Tune. Right now, I'd start him over Aiden O'Connell. Different quarterbacks that have it. Now, there's a lot of teams that have better quarterbacks than him, but I think he's startable. I think he's someone that has the right IQ, and defenses are tough all around. Defenses win championships. Now, I just don't think he makes the dumb plays as much as he did anymore, and that could be effect of what you said on him playing lesser defenses. But I think he kind of got it all together once he moved out to Oregon. That confidence came back to him, and I think that's a reason why Oregon looks as good as they do. Yeah, and those would be my guys right there. Cam Ward, I like him, but I don't know how I feel about him at that next level. I think he's a smart player, but he's probably, a day 3 pick, and I don't necessarily know what I see in him as necessarily an NFL prospect or a starter. I think he definitely has the backup potential to go in there and make, a good game for you, but I don't necessarily know if he's someone that's going to start multiple weeks in the NFL.
So we're talking about the current starters, right, for the Pac-12?
Yeah, I don't really want to dive into Dante Moore too much right here, just because we still don't know what we have in him. We know he has big time potential, but that is, he's already been benched at UCLA, so
come back to Oregon. It's welcome.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking more, like guys that might possibly be drafted this year or next year. That's kind of where some of these guys were thinking. Obviously, I think Dante Moore, at least for me, Malachi Nelson, all those guys are still up there, way up there for me, and Devy. I just kind of was thinking more along the lines like these guys are eligible for this year or next year, like a Sanders who could come out or come back. Just kind of where we were thinking. If people are looking to make moves as we're getting near the end of the year, if they want to try to make trades before we get to the combine, is there someone that you'd be leaning towards, hey, maybe I'd make a move more for Penix, or I'd make a move for somebody else as opposed to Bo Nix. If I had Nix, I'd probably move him for somebody. That's I just kind of want to get an idea where you guys were thinking at this point in the season.
For me, I have Caleb in a tier of his own, and then it's a big drop off to Penix. And then third, I would probably have Shador. And then probably no one else.
Well, that's what I was wondering, because
he has the same thoughts about Bo Nix I do.
Yeah.
Well, and that's my question. Like, Bo Nix is probably on the best team, and he's had, all that around him. But I think, is that also one of the things that hurts him? Like, okay, he's looked good, he's put up some good stats, but like, he's on by far the best team, I think, if you took him and put him on Colorado right now, that could be really ugly, and that's where I think, like, if you took Shador and you put him on Oregon's team, what would he be doing right now on Oregon? So I guess that's kind of what I want to look at it too. I just feel like a lot of these guys are playing real well. Like Cam Ward's another guy. Like, I see some games I really like what I see out of him, and man, there's just games where he disappears, and the games you're like, I thought you would eat that team alive, and he just doesn't. And so I just kind of wanted to see, if anybody was moving up or down your guys' board, at this point of the years, most of them have faced off head to head.
I think if you're trying to make moves for one, Bo Nix is probably the cheapest that I think has the most potential just based on draft capital. I think he's a day 2 pick, right? So if you're trying to make a move, I think he's someone that you can go get for a fair value, because you're going to have to pay through the roof for Caleb. Shador, like, Tommy was saying, that name is going to play a big part. Even if someone's never watched him, they're like, wait, he's Primetime's kid? Yeah, no, you have to pay up for him, right? Penix Jr., just balling out at Washington, number 5 overall in the nation right now. So with that, I think Bo Nix, if you need a quarterback or you're hunting for one, it's a valuable one, because I even think he's, cheaper than JJ McCarthy, so I think it's someone that you can go after and be like, okay, I have that draft capital where if he goes to a great team, what if he goes to the Rams? If he goes to a great team that just has a nice offense, good defense, we could see some things happen for him. He's not starting over Matthew Stafford, but we know Matthew Stafford gets banged up, right? So I think he's someone you can go there and take a risk on.
Well, that's what I was going to ask too, was with the Rams, is he kind of going to be in that Stetson Bennett like zone for the draft, do you think? Or do you think he'll go higher than Bennett, or do you think he'll go lower than Bennett? That's why I was, when he brought up the Rams, that's kind of what I was thinking. I was like, where is he at, draft wise compared to where Bennett went last year?
He is a better prospect than Stetson Bennett. Size wise, his athleticism, he's got a better arm. Bennett can make the throws, but Nix is definitely a better NFL prospect than Stetson Bennett, and I never thought Stetson Bennett was a legit quarterback in the NFL.
I'm just gonna let you know, I'm gonna go back and watch the video and just chop off that part where you said Nix is a better prospect, and just keep that just for you.
With the current Pac-12 guys, the grades I have a 2nd round grade for Penix. I have a 5th to 6th round grade on Bo Nix. Caleb's the 101. DJU, I have him as a 7th round grade. And then Shador, currently I have him as a 3rd round grade. And Cam Ward, I have as a 5th.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was thinking. Is like, is Nix like, is that Nix like that 3rd to 5th rounder? Could he do enough in the combine, maybe? And because of they're having a really good year, maybe they sneak into the playoffs or something, and some people like him. Does he sneak up to a 3rd? It seems like it would be crazy for him to get much higher than that. At least to me, in my mind, unless he just does something spectacular. But that's what I was thinking. Maybe that 3rd to 4th round. Possibly 4th, beginning of the 5th, kind of felt right for me for Nix. I think like Penix would get a little bit of higher shot, but again, the injury history and stuff for him, it feels like him going in the 1st seems way too high for me.
I bet you Bo Nix gets taken at the end of the second, early third.
My comp for Bo Nix was Ryan Tannehill when I evaluated him.
That's fair. Tannehill's a little bit bigger, a little bit better athletic profile considering he was a wide receiver when he was in college. But that's actually not a bad comp for him.
Yeah, just a serviceable quarterback. I think he can start, but is he necessarily the franchise that he's going to turn it around? No, but I mean, he's serviceable.
All right. Actually, SC mentioned a guy that I'm wanting to talk about here in a minute. But JJ McCarthy, is he the Heisman front runner now? Is he the Heisman front runner right now?
I'll let Andy take this one.
I'm gonna say yes. Even with all the fake scandal that's going on right now with Michigan, I think JJ has played the best of all the quarterbacks. I think he's the front runner, and then I think for the draft, I think he's got a strong case to be the second quarterback taken above Drake May.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd go as far to say above Drake May. May has really kind of stepped into what I think people thought of him coming into the season. It's not his fault. His team doesn't have any defense. But he's been playing really, really well. I think he has all the tools the NFL looks for. I think McCarthy does too. He just hasn't had the opportunity to show them in that Michigan offense. But I would probably have McCarthy 3. I'd have him and Ewers probably pretty close together, honestly.
I like it. And you think about with McCarthy, I mean, they have a good defense there as well, but he's also doing it without the same help that all these other quarterbacks have as far as receiving help. You can say he has Corum or Edwards there, but the receivers, it's not someone that came up as a top prospect when we're looking at Roman Wilson, right? So I think it slows a lot more as far as the IQ of the game and making the right plays, extending the play if he needs to, and he's kind of bringing that all together. And the Michigan team is looking really scary on both sides of the ball. They have some great playmakers, and I think he's a big factor of that. Heisman front runner, I'll get back to you on that. I have to watch a lot more tape on that to see if he's the Heisman front runner there. But I mean, he's definitely in the running, But I think his name, with the other name potentials there, I think there's better guys that might get it just based on that. Whether you're thinking Caleb does it again, maybe not with 3 losses. Penix Jr. just on the year he's having alone. And I think when it comes to that kind of award, it's going to be more stat padded than what it is just on what they actually do on the field.
Well, I think McCarthy has the second best odds to win the Heisman now, right behind Penix Jr. So I think with them, it could come down to who is looking at a playoff spot. And if both of them are, then it could be a very interesting decision on who it could be a very, very interesting vote.
I mean, to me, it's become, usually the last couple of years, it feels like it's really become a stat, award. People are really looking at the stats where, if you look back maybe 15, 20 years ago, there was a time where the award was basically who was the leader or the best player on the best team, even if he wasn't necessarily the best player in the nation. And I feel like JJ McCarthy. Well, yeah, and it feels like JJ McCarthy is one of those guys where it's like, if he was like the Miami team with Ken Dorsey, he's winning it. But like that's not necessarily what people do all the time now as the vote goes. Now, if they can beat Ohio State and they can finish undefeated and he plays really well in these next 2 games against Penn State and Ohio State, I could definitely see it because right now, who else are you going to say is the best player on the team? I mean, Blake Corum has been really good. He's been good for a while, but they also have just an unreal offensive line. And it's not like he's putting up a 2,000-yard rushing season. So to me, it's got to go to McCarthy. If they end up clearly feeling like they're the best team in the country, I think you're going to have some people leaning towards him, and they're going to use the, I don't want to say excuse because that's not the right word. They're going to say, hey, well, just because he's not playing in a 5 wide, throw it all over the field system doesn't mean he's not the best player. He's playing in a pro style offense. I think the fact that he's in a pro style offense at Michigan helps, because people are looking at like, well, he's putting up great stats, but he's doing it in the system as opposed to just throwing the ball over the field. I could totally see him winning it. If it goes down to just straight stats, and I think it ends up on how Washington finishes, I think Penix can end up winning it just because of the ridiculous stats he's put up. But I think they have to finish strong. If Washington loses 1 or 2 down the stretch here, I think it's going to knock Penix out. And the only way it keeps him in is if they lose and he just goes off and they still lose. And then people will give him the benefit of the doubt that their defense isn't that great. But all it's going to take is, I think, a couple losses for him. I think people are already soured on Caleb Williams, and we've seen that in the past. You knew he was going to have to do even more than he did last year in order, because, recency bias, everybody gets upset, and they're like, he just won, and he doesn't look as good this year as last year. Even if he ends up with almost identical stats as last year, I think you're just going to have people that are going to not vote for him for that reason, that he didn't look a million times better, or USC wasn't in the national championship hunt. So I think you're going to see some of those things, but I definitely think JJ McCarthy's probably one of the only guys I don't have a Heisman money on a bet on a Heisman. So I'm like kind of upset at myself that I haven't put any money on him, and now he's his odds are so good. I'm like, kind of makes me upset that I didn't jump on that earlier.
If JJ McCarthy is a Heisman front runner, then why not Carson Beck? Aren't they very similar, very close to being the same guy?
Yeah, I mean,
yeah. Mm-hmm. I think you're right. I think they are similar. They're both playing in similar type of systems. I just think there's just a little bit more because of what Stetson Bennett did the last 2 years. I just think Beck is not going to get that benefit because it's not like he's carrying them to wins. And that's all I'm saying. Do I think they're pretty similar players? I feel like they're kind of similar players in the type of players they are and what they're doing for their teams. I just think JJ is going to get a little more of the benefit on the fact that, he's finally, if he can get Michigan over that hump, they're finally getting over the hump the last couple of years. I think that's just going to go a long way in voters' minds. To me, I mean, I used to work with a bunch of guys that voted for the Heisman, and those things matter. Like, those things matter to those guys. It really is. I mean, JJ will carry the Midwest vote if Michigan stays undefeated. All the Midwest writers will vote for JJ.
Well, it also comes down to hype and media coverage too. JJ's getting
always
a lot
matters.
more. JJ's getting a lot more than what Carson Beck is getting, even though they have similar numbers. Matter of fact, Beck's may even be better. And they're in similar situations with how their teams are performing and what type of offense their teams run.
I think with Carson Beck, he has that stink factor on him. Whereas what I mean by that is Stetson Bennett was ahead of him and got playing time. And then this spring, the quarterback position was between him and Brock. And then you have Dylan Raiola coming in, and people are saying he's the guy. So I think he's in that spot where people view him as a good quarterback, but not a really good quarterback or a great quarterback. So he has that stink on him.
Just circling back to the beginning conversation, I think it's just because Michigan looks dominant on all avenues. They look great everywhere right now, and it's because McCarthy is leading on that offensive side. Georgia looks good, but again, I think they look beatable, and I think Michigan is one of those teams. The big game for JJ McCarthy to possibly put him over is going to be the game against Ohio State. Now, does he necessarily need to win that game? No, but if he goes into Ohio State and they battle it out and he just doesn't have a stellar performance, win or lose, then that's definitely going to push him down, because it's going to be like, oh, okay, look, the biggest game of the season, this is how you play out. So that's gonna be a bigger game than anything else. So that will be the deciding factor for me.
Well, he's got a couple of them coming up. He's got Penn State this
Yep.
weekend, and then here in a few weeks, he's got Ohio State. But you're able to say the same thing about Carson Beck. Just finished with Missouri this weekend. He's got Ole Miss next week. They have Tennessee. So those are 3 big time games that he has to navigate through also. And Andy was saying he's kind of got that stigma to him. I just think it's completely unfair.
I think it is unfair, but I just think you're going to get that with the media. When Stetson Bennett won back-to-back championships, now everybody's like, well, you're loaded. You should be good. Like, I don't think it's fair to Carson Beck at all, but I think what Andy says is on point. And I think it does come down to JJ McCarthy. He's got to beat Ohio State. If he beats Penn State and Ohio State and he looks good, or at least doesn't make any crazy bad turnovers, he doesn't even have to have the greatest stats. If he can make some big time plays in those games, to me, it's going to go a long, long way with the media. I think CJ Stroud, I think that might have cost him last year. I really do. I think I thought he was going to win the Heisman. And then if you got to win that game, you got to win that big rivalry game to get the rest of the media on board with you. I just think you have to, unless you're a big underdog, unless you're like a Penix, a guy who's just putting up the most ridiculous stats on a team that, did Washington come out of nowhere? No, but nationally, they kind of feel like they came out of nowhere. So I think that always makes a difference when you're doing that Heisman voting.
Sure. Let's go ahead and jump into another Big Ten quarterback. Drew Aller probably had his most complete game this past weekend. Granted, it wasn't against a very good team, but what do you guys think of Aller? Is he your 2025 QB1, or have you moved him down at all?
He's still my QB1 right now. He's looked great. 20 interceptions, 20 touchdowns, only 1 interception. So he's been doing good, getting the ball where it needs to be, looking phenomenal. Just when he is making the plays and everything, and he's kind of separated himself just because like the rest of the classes look questionable. I know we're talking about Carson Beck and everything, but for me, when going into the season, it was Kate Kuplik as a number 2. He's looked horrible right now. I think it's an up for grab situation. I don't think he has it on lock, but he hasn't necessarily done anything to push him down from QB1 right now for me.
Yeah, to me, it depends on if Sanders comes out. If Sanders, goes back, I think it's going to be between Alar and Sanders for QB1 next year. I think Alar for me gets the benefit of the doubt of whose coach it is as a negative. Like, he's doing well despite his coaching, which I think is a problem. And he doesn't have a lot of talent around him as far as weapons on the outside. I think he's one of those other sides. Like, he's a guy, if you turn around and you said, hey, and you put him on Ohio State or you put him on Oregon with their weapons, I think with their coaching as well, I think you would see a lot more. So I think that's the hard part about him to kind of look at, because he doesn't get a lot of chance to just toss the ball around. He doesn't get a chance to really just show his skill all the time. And I think that's just going to be an issue at Penn State. I mean, that's kind of always been there. So to me, I'm not holding that against him that his stats aren't crazy or great, because I see that he's not really getting the opportunities other guys are.
I've always been the low guy on him, and I still am. I mean, he has the tools, he has the traits, but I just need to see more. I see a guy who at times struggles with processing, and I don't think he trusts what he sees, and that's holding him back. And also, he doesn't get the opportunity with where he's at. And I've always been that low guy on him.
Do you, Andy, do you think some of that of him processing a little slower, like, to me, like you said, I don't feel like he trusts his wide receivers. He's not going to give guys a chance to make a play for him, because he's like, if they're open or wide open or wherever, he's going to make the pass. But he is not squeezing any 50-50 balls in there to most guys. And to me, like you said, I think it looks like a trust factor. He just isn't sure those guys are going to step up and make the play where, you're seeing that with a Bo Nix or with a Penix, where those guys are putting the ball up there and going, "Hey, I think my guy's better than your guy, and I'm going to give my guy a chance." You don't see any of that with Penn State when you watch their games.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
with
a lot of times with that, it does take chemistry, and with all that practice that they've had, I'm sure he's put the ball where it needs to be, and the receivers just don't come up with it.
yeah, so that point, it is easy to say, well, Bo Nix has Troy Franklin, Kyle McCord has Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka, and Michael Penix Jr. has Odunze and McMillan and Polk and Bernard. Whereas who does Aller have? He's throwing to Dante Cephas. He's throwing to Keandre Lambert Smith. Neither one of those guys are bona fide NFL prospects. They're not big time receivers. But the guys that the other guys have are.
Well, you can also say the same thing with J.J. McCarthy. He's throwing to Roman Wilson. He's made Roman Wilson a draft prospect. Roman Wilson coming into this year, he was a guy that had not lived up to any hype. Michigan as a core has not developed any receivers. And when they do, they're needed to be developed at the NFL level. So he's made Roman Wilson a legit draft prospect.
I agree with that. That is a good point there too. I do want to get to a couple running backs before we end tonight's show. I'd like to talk about first. I want to start with Rocket Sanders. Came back this past week. Had a pretty good game against Florida. Went for over 100 yards. I think that was what we were wanting to see from him. To be able to declare him as quote unquote back. We wanted to see the explosion. We wanted to see his vision. We wanted to see what he's able to do against a solid enough defense to be able to say, hey, this guy's still a big time NFL prospect.
Agreed. I did my whole RB thread yesterday. My big thing was I think he came back to showcase that he's still value at the NFL level, but I also think he lost a step. I think he's someone that didn't look as explosive as he once did as far as his speed. He still definitely has the vision, still has the footwork to do it, but it looks like he was just a little bit slower than what it was. I don't know if that's an injury lingering or anything like that, but I hope it's something where they play in with caution. If he's really 100% back, then it's something where it's like, okay, I need to dive deeper into it because again, he just looks slower. So is it something where it's he's playing with caution just when he's on the field? He looked great, had that vision, had the footwork, had what he needed to do to get to that level, and show he's a great prospect to be drafted. But it's also something that's like, man, you could do that at combine or pro day. You don't necessarily need to go out there and risk that injury for it to happen.
Well, at the same time, he also got up to 242 pounds. He gained over 25 pounds this offseason. And coming in when the season first started and those reports came out, I think a lot of us liked that. We liked the fact that he bulked up and he still looked chiseled, and supposedly he was just as fast. But when you watch him, the extra 20 pounds, you see that. And so I do hope he trims back down to about 225, 220 pounds, and we see the old Rocket Sanders.
Yeah, I was about to say, him dropping about 15 pounds would probably be beneficial for him. Let's go ahead and move on to the Bedlam game. Ollie Gordon and Gavin Sawchuk both had really, really good games. Ollie Gordon continues to do Ollie Gordon things. Steadily moving up my rankings. He is very, very near the RB1 for the 2025 class for me. He's not officially at that yet. I still want, I still have Nicholas Singleton there, but Ollie Gordon he's definitely pushing him for it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the biggest takeaway for me though, before I jump the gun, I mean he's climbing rapidly, and my biggest thing at the beginning of the season is, man, you got to feed this guy. He's a great athlete. He's a great running back. He knows what he needs to do. He's agile, but he's quick. And they started to, and we're seeing that the turnaround for this offense when they're running through Ollie Gordon. But like we saw in Singleton and even Quinson Junkins, I need to see it multiple times, not just one season, because this season I had them both as heavy prospects, and it's like, wait, there's some holes that I didn't necessarily see last year. So I need to see it again from him going into next year before actually bumping him to it. I mean, if you're going off this year alone, then I think he could be your RB1 for that class. But I want to see what he could do going into next year if he's going to continue this momentum. He doesn't necessarily need to be getting 20 carries a game, but I still want to see the explosiveness he brings, the smart IQ that he has, and things of that nature to actually move him up into that RB1 role for 2025.
Well, the one thing we do need to watch out for is Oklahoma State and Mike Gundy running him until the wheels fall off, because he has been getting a ton of work lately.
Yeah, I think it's like 20, about like 22 plus carries a game, it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, they've got to pound the rock with him. You've seen it when they were not great at the beginning of the year, and as soon as they got him involved on the offense and started giving him the ball nonstop, that team improved greatly. So, and those college coaches, they want those wins, man. If they're going to ride their horse, and that's what they're going to do right now. So it'll be interesting to see what they keep doing, but I would be surprised if they let off the gas at all with him the rest of the year, because Oklahoma State did not look like a good football team at the beginning of the year. They looked real bad, and they've looked completely different since he's taken over.
Yeah. Now, Andy, I know you kind of have a guy that reminds you a lot of Ollie Gordon, but kind of a discount store version of him. Who exactly is that?
Jarquez Hunter for Auburn. If you like Ollie Gordon, I think you should like him as well. They're pretty similar styles as you watch the film. And I think right now he's just a cheaper version of that. The past couple of weeks, he's really blown up when Auburn's giving him, the carries and everything. I just think he's someone that, Ollie Gordon's getting the hype that he deserves. People do like him. But, if you want someone that's, kind of like that, discount store version, that would be him.
Okay, and one more guy that we're wanting to get to tonight. One last guy. JT, you had mentioned Trey Harris, wide receiver for Ole Miss, and if we are starting to take him serious as an NFL prospect. Short answer for me is yes. He has the size. He looks athletic. Goes up and grabs those 50-50 balls. My worry is his injury history. Is he a guy who could stay healthy moving into the next level? You look at size and athletic combo, sure. But the injury history kind of scares me with him, as with him being a wide receiver who relies on, having to get up to full speed all the time.
Yeah, because the big reason I wanted to bring him up was, I know me and SC both talked about him kind of coming into the season, was Zachariah Franklin and Trey Harris, like making the jump from UTSA and Louisiana Tech. Could those guys who looked fantastic CFF wise on those schools, could they make the jump to the SEC? Would they be players that stood out? And Harris so far, Franklin's been injured all year. He's done nothing. But Harris, the injuries have been a problem. I guess that's what I'm saying. When he's played, he's looked really good. I mean, absolute monster game last week, which kind of made me think about him again. 11 catches, 213 and a touchdown against Texas A&M. He's got great size. The injuries are what bother me. I just want to see what you guys kind of think, Devy wise, what we maybe could expect from him come draft day, because he has shown he can play in the SEC. Now he hasn't been super consistent, and he has had the injuries, and that is what worries me for him as far as how high draft capital will someone invest in him, come draft day.
I think it's going to really come down to his pro day and combine, but as of right now, I would see him more of a day 3 guy.
I mean, I can see that. I could also see him going undrafted. I think he's someone you could take a risk on, for in your rookie drafts and everything like that. But I don't necessarily see him anything past a 7th round. Anything. I mean, the class around just in general, we're talking about every position is pretty deep. So he's someone that has to fight for. And this wide receiver class is heavy. He's not even necessarily in my top 20 right now. So
Yeah.
I think he has potential, sure, but you're taking a flyer on him and you're hoping the teams do. So.
Yeah, I have him outside of my top 15 in this particular class. So I don't see major draft capital for him. Like I said, mid to late day 3 for me.
Yeah, to me, I was looking at him as like possibly 4th, 5th rounder if things kind of stayed where they're at. Now, maybe he stays healthy and crushes it down the rest of the season, and Ole Miss looks good this week against Georgia. And if he has a big game against Georgia, obviously that would be huge for him if he would able to do that. But I just kind of wanted to see what you guys thought, because he's had some really nice big time games, but he's really struggled to be consistent this year.
Yeah, my only thing with him is with this deep receiving class, there's like a dozen other guys with his speed, size, makeup, so he's gonna get lost in the fold. That's just my only thing with him.
Sure.
Then that's what I was thinking. I did want to see what you guys thought. If that was kind of going to be his downfall, was how deep this class is, and he's not going to stand out like, say, even if he was in last year's class, because so many guys were smaller guys, maybe he would have stood out just a hair more, being a little bit bigger of a wide receiver, 6'2", 200. But it seems like there's bigger guys this year. It seems like there's more of those guys that are similar to him, where we didn't have that in last year's class.
Right. All right, guys. Well, before we get out of here, I do want to give a quick shout out to Fantasy Sports Heroics and Wisconsin Sports Heroics. They're doing big things with getting getting a lot of different sports avenues out there. I know Fantasy Sports Heroics is becoming more of a all-inclusive sports website and media center. So I want to give them a quick shout out. Dustin Judge runs that pretty well over there. Guys, go and tell us where we're able to find you and what it is you're working on, and when that should be coming out.
Yeah, you can find me at JT Orange on the X. You can find my show, The Stew with JT Brew, on dynastyprosfootball.com. Usually come out with my college football gambling show, just my favorite picks of the week, that kind of stuff. We discuss the big matchups. That usually is every Wednesday. If you're into hockey, I do a hockey podcast as well in The Stew with JT Brew every Wednesday night. IDP stuff on Fantrax on Wednesdays is my article, and then I do some IDP stuff for DLF, and my rankings for IDP Dynasty are on DLF if you're on there.
You can find me on X at the PPR. So doing a thread, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, going through just my Devy learnings from the previous week, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, IDP, and then my rankings. I have my IDP start sit article for the NFL every Thursday on RPO, my IDDP, individual defensive Devy players, on Tuesday with Dynasty Pros, and then doing RAM content for the High Sports Creator Network, So they just signed Carson Wentz, which is big news because Brent Rippion's trash, but I'll be going over where they're at in the draft right now and potential picks. I think they have the 6th pick right now, so I'll be going over potential picks for them as they go into their bye week this week.
You can find me at Andy_Fam1 every Thursday, dropping a player profile, me focusing on the 24 draft class. So when if you're a dynasty player and everything, you'll have everything that you need to know about that prospect coming up if you're not paying attention right now. And then Friday, drop Devy and C2C games to watch. And then every Monday, recapping it with Devy stock up, stock down, and C2C names to watch.
And as always, I am Tommy Harvey. You can find me on X at Dynasty Pros Tom. I've actually started doing some writing work for Gridiron Heroics and Fantasy Sports Heroics, also to go along with Dynasty Pros Football. What I do over there is I do a lot of game, like just individual game breakdowns with some betting analysis. Go check that out, and also as always, go check out dynastyprosfootball.com. Check out our trade calculator, all of our rankings, all of our great content that Andy puts out, that SC puts out. We have a lot of Devy content over there. But that's going to do it for tonight. Join us back on Thursday as we go over week 11's week 11's slate. Got some pretty big games coming up this weekend. But until then, we will see you guys later.